2 years had passed since the day the skies darkened with alien vessels, a fleet so vast it eclipsed the sun in major cities across the globe. These weren't visitors. They were refugees turned conquerors, displaced from a dying world and desperate for a new home. The alien invasion began not with diplomacy, but with precision strikes against Earth's military installations, communication networks, and power grids. Within 72 hours, governments collapsed, and millions perished in the initial assault. The survivors quickly learned their place in the new order. Laborers, servants, and test subjects for the advanced beings who now claimed Earth as their salvation. Humanity's greatest technologies, nuclear weapons, stealth aircraft, electromagnetic weapons, proved laughably primitive against defenses evolved through millennia of interstellar warfare. In the smoldering ruins of what once was civilization, the aliens established processing centers, massive structures where humans were sorted for various purposes. The strongest were sent to excavation sites, mining rare minerals and constructing mysterious devices that hummed with otherworldly energy. The brightest were separated for interrogation, their knowledge of Earth's resources extracted before being discarded. Children disappeared into research facilities, their fate unknown but feared by all. Meanwhile, alien engineers commandeered factories and laboratories, repurposing them to build weapons of terrifying capability. Whatever conflict had driven them from their home hadn't ended. They were preparing for something greater, using Earth as both sanctuary and arsenal. Yet, even as cities fell and hope dimmed, something remarkable happened in the scorched landscapes of Australia's outback. The continent's isolation, harsh conditions, and vast uninhabited regions had allowed pockets of military personnel and civilians to evade the initial alien sweep. Among them was Colonel Jackson Barrett, a decorated Special Forces commander who'd been leading training exercises deep in the Northern Territory when the invasion began. Barrett watched through satellite feeds as Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth fell in quick succession, then made a decision that would alter humanity's fate. Rather than surrender or mount a futile counterattack, he would build a resistance from the ground up, gathering survivors and establishing a network of hidden compounds beneath the red earth. "They may have the skies, but we know the land," became Barrett's rallying cry, as his forces grew from dozens to hundreds to thousands. Aboriginal guides proved invaluable, their ancient knowledge of hidden water sources and natural shelters keeping the growing resistance alive as alien drones patrolled above. Barrett's network expanded through coded radio transmissions, each communication disguised as atmospheric interference to evade alien detection. Their survival tactics evolved daily, moving only at night, using thermal-blocking ponchos salvaged from military bases, and developing a sign language to communicate when electronic signals might give away their position. Every victory was small but significant: an ambushed patrol, a hijacked supply transport, a rescued group of prisoners. The turning point came 9 months into the occupation, when a resistance scout reported something unprecedented: conflict among the invaders. A transport ship had crash-landed near Alice Springs, not from human intervention, but from what appeared to be internal sabotage. Barrett dispatched his best team to investigate, led by Captain Matthew Chen, a former intelligence officer with the Australian Defence Force. What they discovered would change everything. Not all the aliens shared the same vision for Earth's future. A faction within the invading force opposed the extinction threat posed to humans, seeing in Earth's defenders something their own species had lost: an indomitable will to survive against overwhelming odds. The crashed ship contained not only advanced technology but also potential allies. Communication proved challenging but not impossible. The defecting aliens, who called themselves the Mirren, possessed technology that could translate basic concepts, and over weeks of cautious interaction, a foundation of trust emerged. They revealed critical information about alien military strategy and the locations of human processing centers. Most importantly, they disclosed the existence of a bioweapon their species had developed, not to use against humans, but to protect them. This genetic warfare tool could specifically target the neural pathways of the invading force, temporarily disrupting their ability to coordinate complex actions. With modification, It could give humanity a fighting chance without causing extinction-level harm to either species. The ethical conflict this presented was immediate. Was it right to use biological agents against sentient beings, even those who had caused such suffering? While debate raged within the resistance leadership, the Mirren liaison, who humans called Echo for his ability to mimic human speech patterns, made the decision for them. Under cover of darkness, Echo led a small human-alien alliance team into a research facility where the bioweapon was stored. The raid was perfectly timed to coincide with a massive electrical storm that disrupted alien surveillance systems. As alien security forces converged on their position, Echo demonstrated combat abilities that left even the seasoned human soldiers in awe, moving with impossible speed and precision to neutralize threats without killing. The team escaped with the bioweapon canisters just as reinforcements arrived, disappearing into the labyrinthine tunnel system beneath the facility. As dawn broke over the Australian desert, humanity had acquired its first real advantage in the war, and the underground resistance movement had evolved into something the invaders never anticipated: a partnership between species that recognized the value of Earth not as a conquered prize, but as a shared home worth defending. The once gleaming harbor of Sydney now reflected only the sickly green glow of alien vessels hovering above skyscrapers, reduced to skeletal frameworks. 2 years into the alien invasion, the iconic opera house had been transformed into a command center, its distinctive sails now supporting a network of pulsing energy transmitters that maintained a shield over the central city. What remained of Sydney's business district served as the primary processing hub for Australia's east coast, where captured humans were catalogued, implanted with tracking devices, and assigned to labour battalions. The aliens had chosen Sydney as their continental headquarters precisely because of its symbolic value to human resistance, a psychological warfare tactic that had proven effective on other worlds they had conquered. Yet they had underestimated the fierce determination that characterizes humanity when pushed to the brink of extinction. Alpha Team, maintain suppression fire on the northern barricade. Bravo, I need that alien technology dampener operational. In 90 seconds or we lose our window, Captain Amelia Chen barked into her comm unit, ducking as alien plasma rounds melted chunks of concrete mere inches from her position. The Sydney battle had raged for 72 hours without pause, the longest sustained engagement since the resistance had begun retaking territory 3 months earlier. The fighting was particularly brutal in the narrow streets surrounding Darling Harbour, where alien ground troops, 8-foot biomechanical soldiers with enhanced sensory capabilities, methodically cleared buildings while aerial support from dart-shaped fighters eliminated any human foolish enough to remain exposed for more than a few seconds. Military strategy had evolved on both sides. The aliens had adapted to human guerrilla tactics with predictive algorithms, while the resistance had learned to disrupt alien command structures through targeted electromagnetic pulses. Lieutenant Gary Wombat Williams crouched behind the rusted hull of an overturned ferry. His squad of 12 resistance fighters, the sole survivors of what had been a platoon of 50 that morning, checking weapons and tending to wounds that had been hastily treated with Medifoam. They've adapted to our EMP frequencies again, he muttered, examining the modified pulse rifle that had proven devastatingly effective against alien armor just weeks earlier, but now barely disrupted their systems. The survival tactics that had kept his unit alive through 18 months of fighting were failing as the alien opposition learned and evolved with terrifying speed. Williams had watched his best friend disintegrate before his eyes, when a new type of alien weapon locked onto his neural signature and simply erased him from existence. The moral dilemma faced by every resistance fighter was intensifying. How far should humans go to defeat an enemy that possessed such overwhelming technological superiority? Would victory require becoming something unrecognizably brutal, something other than human? 5 kilometers away, in what had once been the underground service tunnels of Central Station, Colonel Barrett studied holographic projections of the battlefield displayed by reverse-engineered alien technology. The human resistance maintained their position despite overwhelming odds, but the cost was becoming unsustainable. Every hour brought reports of another squad lost, another position overrun. The bioweapon that had provided such hope during its initial deployment was losing effectiveness as the primary alien faction developed countermeasures. Barrett's alien allies, now numbering nearly 300 defectors, worked alongside human scientists to modify the formula, but progress was slow. "We can hold for another 48 hours, maximum," his operations officer reported, the exhaustion evident in her bloodshot eyes. "After that, we'll have to fall back to the Blue Mountains or risk complete annihilation." What the aliens couldn't comprehend, what gave humans their edge despite the technological gap, was the sheer adaptability of human warfare under pressure. When conventional weapons failed, resistance fighters improvised explosive devices from common chemicals. When alien sensors detected body heat, humans covered themselves in the cooling mud from Sydney Harbor's polluted waters. When alien patrols established predictable routes, snipers positioned themselves days in advance in hidden nests, remaining motionless for up to 50 hours before taking a single perfect shot. Most critically, the resistance had learned to capture rather than kill certain high-value alien targets, extracting crucial intelligence through methods developed by the Mirren defectors that bypassed the suicide protocols implanted in all invasion forces. This genetic warfare of information had revealed the aliens' most significant vulnerability: their rigid hierarchical command structure that collapsed without constant reinforcement from superior officers. Dawn broke over Sydney Harbor, illuminating a landscape transformed by futuristic warfare into something reminiscent of Earth's prehistoric past, a primordial terrain of craters, twisted metal, and ecological devastation. Alien dropships descended through low-hanging clouds of chemical smoke, deploying fresh troops to replace those lost in the night's fighting. The resistance had expected this, had counted on it. As the newest wave of enemy combatants moved into predetermined positions, Lieutenant Williams gave the signal that activated the Resistance's most ambitious trap yet. Beneath the aliens' feet, throughout the central business district, dormant, rainfall technology, salvaged from alien equipment and modified by human engineers, activated simultaneously. The resulting energy pulse wasn't designed to kill, but to disrupt the neural implants that connected alien soldiers to their command network. For precious minutes, the invaders stood immobilized, their systems attempting to reboot, while human strike teams emerged from hidden bunkers to engage at point-blank range. The temporary advantage came at tremendous cost. The energy requirements for the rainfall devices had drained the Resistance's power reserves to critical levels. Emergency generators kept life support running in the subterranean command center, where wounded fighters were treated, but defensive systems, communication networks, and environmental controls throughout the underground complex began shutting down one by one. In the medical bay, Dr. Dennis Park worked feverishly to stabilize a young soldier whose encounter with an alien chemical weapon had left crystalline formations growing from his exposed skin. "We're losing more than we're saving," he confessed to Amelia when she came to check on her wounded team. "This isn't just a battle for territory anymore. It's extinction threat versus extinction threat. Their bioweapons are becoming more specifically tailored to human genetics." He lowered his voice, looking around to ensure no one else could hear. "There's something else. The latest tissue samples from alien casualties show evidence of human DNA incorporation. They're not just fighting us, they're studying us, adapting parts of our genetic code into their own. It's as if they're preparing for something beyond this invasion." As night fell again over Sydney, the resistance position had improved marginally, but remained critical. 3 key checkpoints had been reclaimed, and alien air superiority had been temporarily neutralized thanks to a daring raid on their landing, zoned by a human-alien alliance special operations team. Colonel Barrett stood at the harbor's edge, watching distant explosions illuminate the night sky over what had once been the North Shore. A Mirren scout approached, its translucent skin reflecting the fires raging across the water. "The Kali warriors have been detected in orbit," it communicated through its translator device, referring to the aliens' elite combat specialists, whose arrival typically signaled a major offensive. "Their flagship will reach atmosphere within 12 hours. Barrett nodded grimly, having anticipated this development since intercepting encrypted alien communications 3 days earlier. He activated his comm unit, connecting to all resistance cells simultaneously. "This is Barrett. Initiate Operation Thunderfall." I repeat, initiate Operation Thunderfall. Across what remained of Sydney, resistance fighters began emergency evacuation protocols while designated teams prepared demolition charges at key strategic points. The battle for Sydney had reached its most crucial phase, one that would determine not just the fate of a city, but perhaps the survival of human resistance in the entire southern hemisphere. Captain Matt Chen pulled the rebreather, mask tighter over his face as the putrid waters of Sydney's sewage system sloshed around his knees. The alien invasion had destroyed much of the city's infrastructure, but these ancient tunnels, some dating back to colonial times, remained largely intact and, crucially, absent from alien mapping systems. His 5-person infiltration team moved in practiced silence, each step calculated to minimize disturbance in the fetid water. Their survival tactics had been refined through 18 months of urban warfare. No radio communications, no lights except for the dim red glow of their tactical goggles and specialized sound-dampening suits salvaged from an abandoned military research facility. Leading from the front, Matt consulted the 3-dimensional holographic map projected from a device strapped to his wrist. Alien technology modified by their Mirren allies to avoid detection by enemy scanners. Above them, the massive shadow of the alien vessel blotted out even the memory of sunlight, its hull extending nearly 2 kilometers across Sydney's central business district. "Echo says we're directly beneath the primary access point," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, the team's xenobiology specialist who maintained direct communication with their alien ally through a neural interface implanted at the base of her skull. The device represented the pinnacle of human-alien technology integration, painful and dangerous to use, but offering instantaneous translation of the complex multitonal language used by the Mirren. The maintenance hatch should cycle open in exactly 47 seconds when their environmental systems perform automated waste evacuation. The team quickly secured breathing apparatus and adhesive grip pads to their extremities. Matt gave a silent 3-finger countdown before the tunnel around them vibrated with subsonic energy. A circular section of the ceiling dilated open, releasing a brief cascade of luminescent blue fluid that their suits repelled like mercury on glass. Without hesitation, the team activated their grip pads and climbed upward against gravity into the alien ship's undercarriage. The interior of the vessel defied human architectural logic. Corridors curved and intersected at impossible angles. Surfaces shifted between solid and permeable states, and the artificial gravity fluctuated subtly, as if breathing. Had it not been for Echo's meticulous preparation, they would have been hopelessly lost within seconds. "Remember," Matt whispered as they assembled in what Echo had described as a rarely monitored maintenance junction, "our primary objective is intelligence gathering. Secondary objective is freeing human prisoners from holding cells in Sector 7. Engage hostiles only when absolutely necessary." He didn't need to remind them of the consequences of detection. They had all seen the aftermath of failed infiltration attempts, the remains of resistance fighters subjected to alien bioweapon experiments, the genetic warfare being conducted. Aboard these vessels produced horrors that haunted even the most hardened veterans. Matt checked the modified alien weapon strapped to his forearm, a narrow tube containing compressed plasma that could disintegrate organic matter without sound or flash. Following Echo's pre-programmed route, they encountered their first sign of the human captives when passing through a translucent membrane that separated the ship's mechanical systems from what appeared to be a laboratory level. Through wavering, partitions that functioned like one-way glass, they witnessed dozens of humans suspended in amber-colored fluid, connected to pulsating organic tubes that extracted and injected various substances. Rodriguez's face hardened behind her mask as her implant translated the alien glyphs floating beside each tank. "They're categorizing genetic adaptability," she murmured, looking for specific markers that indicate resistance to their bioweapons. Before Matt could respond, The ambient light shifted from cool blue to vibrating red. Not an alarm, but a change in shift patterns that Echo had warned would bring more alien personnel to this section. They pressed themselves into recessed alcoves as three tall, spindly figures glided past, their multi-jointed limbs moving with unsettling grace beneath diaphanous protective coverings. Operation Broken Chain shifted into its most dangerous phase when they reached the central holding area where hundreds of recently captured humans were contained in honeycomb-like cells. Two alien guards, different from those they had seen. Earlier, with heavier armor and multiple visual organs swiveling independently, maintained watch from an elevated platform. Matt signaled to Corporal Jackson, their communications specialist, who activated a device that projected Echo's voice and pheromone signature. The guard's posture immediately changed, appendages stiffening in what the team recognized as a gesture of deference to perceived authority. Echo's message, incomprehensible to human ears, apparently conveyed routine inspection orders because the guards moved away from their consoles without question. Rodriguez slipped forward, placing Echo's override module against the biotechnical interface. With a soft hissing sound, the cell barriers dissolved, releasing confused and terrified prisoners. Chaos erupted not from human panic but from an unexpected source. A contingent of alien defectors, held in a separate security section, had also been freed by Rodriguez's override. These prisoners, bearing the ritual scarification that identified them as Mirren sympathizers, immediately turned on their former comrades. The resulting alien-on-alien violence provided perfect cover as Matt's team directed the human prisoners toward the emergency evacuation pods Echo had identified in their briefing. The ethical conflict tore at Matt as he witnessed the Mirren rebels systematically executing their former commanders. These were the same allies who had risked everything to help humanity, now revealing a capacity for calculated violence that reminded him uncomfortably of his own species' darker impulses. Yet there was no time for moral contemplation. The ship's security protocols had activated, sealing bulkheads and initiating internal defense systems that would release paralyzing agents through the ventilation network within minutes. The infiltration team's exfiltration plan collapsed when they encountered a section not included in Echo's schematics, a nursery chamber containing dozens of immature aliens in various developmental stages. Matt froze, his weapon trained on creatures that, despite their alien physiology, displayed unmistakably infant-like behaviors. Military strategy dictated eliminating all threats, and these would grow to become the same beings that had slaughtered millions of humans. Yet, as a gelatinous pod shifted to reveal a small alien with oversized eyes that tracked his movement with obvious intelligence and curiosity, Matt felt the weight of an impossible decision. "Captain, we need to move," urged Private Torres, the team's demolitions expert, who had rigged their escape route with charges designed to create sufficient confusion for extraction. Matt lowered his weapon. "Mark alternative path Delta," he ordered, redirecting the team away from the nursery. Rodriguez gave him a barely perceptible nod of approval. Their humanity, it seemed, would not become another casualty of this war, even as alien technology and genetic warfare reshaping their world threatened to make such sentiments obsolete. Alarms screamed through the vessel as Matt accessed the ship's central control node, a pulsating organic-mechanical hybrid that Echo had described as the nexus of the vessel's distributed intelligence. As Rodriguez established a connection to download critical tactical data, the team's worst-case scenario materialized in the form of a massive alien warrior, at least 9 feet tall, its exoskeleton augmented with mechanical components that hummed with deadly energy. Matt recognized the distinct markings of a Kali commander, the elite warriors whose tactical brilliance had orchestrated humanity's near defeat in the initial alien invasion. There was no time for subtlety. Torres fired a modified EMP grenade that should have disabled the commander's augmentations. The alien simply absorbed the electromagnetic pulse, its armor adapting in real time to the attack. With terrifying speed, it launched itself across the chamber, impaling Corporal Jackson on a blade-like appendage before anyone could react. The remaining team members opened fire simultaneously, their weapons barely penetrating the commander's adaptive defenses. As the alien prepared a second attack, Rodriguez completed the data extraction and shouted, "Fall back to extraction point, now!" Private Westfield, their close-quarters combat specialist, engaged the commander directly, buying precious seconds for Matt to place a conventional high-explosive grenade within a gap in the alien's armor that appeared briefly during its attack sequence. The team retreated as the commander's internal systems catastrophically failed, its reinforced body collapsing in a shower of biotechnical components and fluids. Matt pulled Westfield's injured form through the final security membrane as the charges detonated behind them, sealing their escape route from pursuers and igniting secondary explosions throughout the ship's propulsion systems. As they emerged onto the rooftop extraction point, where human resistance helicopters waited under active camouflage, the night sky above Sydney erupted in brilliant light as military jets from the Resistance's hidden airfield delivered a precision strike against the now vulnerable alien vessel. The infiltration had succeeded beyond expectation, but as Matt watched the massive ship list to one side, venting atmosphere and debris, he couldn't shake the image of those alien children, now potentially orphaned by the same conflict that had claimed so many human families. The underground resistance headquarters hummed with activity as Matt's team was debriefed in separate compartments, standard procedure to ensure intelligence consistency without cross-contamination of observations. The Sydney facility, constructed within a former metro station abandoned decades before the alien invasion, had been expanded and reinforced to withstand orbital bombardment. Walls of compressed earthen materials mixed with salvaged alien alloys provided both structural support and protection against advanced scanning technologies. In the central command hub, holographic displays tracked resistance movements across the continent, while medical facilities treated the wounded with a combination of traditional methods and reverse-engineered alien techniques. Dr. Dennis Park hovered over Rodriguez as technicians carefully disconnected the neural interface from her skull, the removal process as delicate as the implantation. "Any lingering psychic bleed-through?" he asked, checking her pupils for the telltale dilation that indicated continued alien mental presence, a common side effect of prolonged neural connection with Mirren physiology. "Nothing significant," she replied, but Echo seemed distressed. During the final download sequence, something in the data triggered an emotional response I couldn't fully interpret. Captain Wessex, the intelligence division chief whose left arm had been replaced with a cybernetic prosthesis after an early encounter with alien bioweapons, reviewed the preliminary analysis of the downloaded data with increasing concern. "There's a pattern here I don't like," he muttered, manipulating the holographic representation with practiced precision. The alien language, a complex combination of mathematical constructs and multi-dimensional symbols, had initially seemed impenetrable, but 2 years of collaboration with Mirren defectors had yielded significant breakthroughs in translation. Most alien texts contained no recognizable human concepts whatsoever, their thought patterns so fundamentally different that conceptual overlap was minimal, which made the repeated appearance of a single English word all the more disturbing. "Rainfall," Wessex said aloud, highlighting the term that appeared consistently throughout the tactical communications. "It's the only human word in their entire database, and it appears in their highest security protocols." The implications sent an involuntary shudder through his cybernetic arm, the neural connections reacting to his biological system's stress response. "Get me Colonel Barrett and Commander Hayes immediately, and find that Mirren scientist, the one they call Ember. We need a cultural context check." Commander Hayes arrived first, her weathered face showing the strain of 72 hours without sleep as Sydney's evacuation plans were finalized under her direction. The military strategy specialist had opposed working with alien defectors from the beginning, her distrust rooted in the loss of her entire family during the initial invasion. "Another cryptic threat?" she asked, reviewing the highlighted data with obvious skepticism. "We're already facing extinction. How much worse could it get?" The answer came from an unexpected source, as Colonel Barrett entered with Echo and 2 other Mirren representatives, their translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that indicated intense agitation. "Rainfall isn't just a code," Barrett explained. his voice uncharacteristically grim. "It's a reference to Pine Gap." The name hung in the air like a physical presence. Pine Gap, the secretive American-Australian joint defense facility in Central Australia, had been among the first targets destroyed in the invasion. Its remote location and significant defensive capabilities apparently warranting a disproportionate alien response. "The Americans were housing something there," Barrett continued. "Something that even our highest military clearance personnel weren't fully briefed on. Something that apparently terrifies our enemy enough that they dedicated an entire linguistics division to this single term." Echo stepped forward, its movement fluid despite the heavy gravity shield required for Mirren comfort in Earth's atmosphere. The translation device attached to its thoracic cavity emitted a synthesized voice tinged with harmonics beyond human hearing range. "The Kali warriors approach your world not merely for conquest or resources," it communicated, "but for retrieval. The artifact your people designated Rainfall is known to my species through ancestral memory. It has brought extinction to countless civilizations across 3 galactic sectors." The alien's multifaceted eyes rotated independently, a sign of extreme stress recognized by those who had worked closely with the Mirren. "Your scientists classified it as a meteorological research tool, but its true purpose is biological transformation on a planetary scale. It predates both our species and was designed as a genetic warfare implementation mechanism more sophisticated than anything either civilization has developed." Rodriguez, who had joined the briefing despite medical recommendations for rest, noted the pattern of communication between the 3 Mirren present, subtle physical cues suggesting they were debating how much to reveal. "You've encountered this technology before," she stated rather than asked. "Your species has used it." The holographic display shifted as Ember, the Mirren scientist, interfaced directly with the system. The representation that formed showed a stellar neighborhood recognizable as the Orion Spur, but with planetary configurations dating back approximately 65 million years. "The extinction of your dinosaurs was not caused by a natural asteroid impact as your paleontologists theorized," Echo explained as the simulation showed a controlled descent of an object too geometrically perfect to be natural. "It was the first deployment of rainfall technology in this solar system, by ancestors of those who now seek to reclaim it." The revelation hit the assembled human leaders like a physical blow. The implication that Earth had been subjected to deliberate extinction events, that the evolution of mammals and eventually humans had been an unintended consequence of ancient alien conflict, fundamentally altered humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. "The cycle repeats approximately every 100 million years," Ember added through its own translator. "Your species is simply unfortunate to have evolved to technological capability during an active reclamation period." "Pine Gap," Wessex muttered, pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. 1966, when the facility was established. They weren't building a listening post. They were containing something that crashed. He accessed classified historical records with his security clearance, bringing up redacted reports of an atmospheric anomaly detected entering Earth's atmosphere over Central Australia in late 1965. They found a fragment of this rainfall technology and built the entire facility around it. That's why the aliens hit it so hard in the initial assault. But they didn't find what they were looking for. His cybernetic hand clenched involuntarily, crushing the metal stylus he'd been holding. "And now they're bringing in their elite warriors to conduct a more thorough search." Barrett nodded grimly. The tactical implications clear. If they recover this technology, it's not just human extinction we're facing. It's potentially the erasure of all complex life on Earth, a planetary reset to create conditions more favorable for their biology. The underground room fell silent as the magnitude of the threat sank in. The alien invasion had seemed catastrophic enough, but now revealed itself as merely the preliminary phase of something far more apocalyptic. As emergency evacuation orders were transmitted to all remaining resistance cells across Sydney, Commander Hayes laid out a stark assessment of their options. "We've lost nearly 60% of our combat-capable personnel in the past 72 hours. Our remaining aircraft are critically low on fuel. Alien reinforcements are already in orbit. The military strategy is clear. We need to withdraw to the interior, consolidate our forces, and prepare a defense of the central desert regions around the former Pine Gap site. Her proposed plan displayed ruthless pragmatism. Abandonment of all coastal population centers, concentration of remaining resources on defending a technology they barely understood, and implementation of a scorched earth policy that would leave nothing of value for the advancing alien forces. Abraham, the civilian leadership representative, immediately objected. "There are still thousands of unrescued people in Sydney alone. We cannot simply abandon them to capture or worse." The ethical conflict that had divided the resistance since its formation resurfaced with renewed intensity. Survival at any cost versus preservation of the human values they were fighting to defend. Hayes's response was coldly logical. "Every hour we delay, more Kaylee warriors enter the atmosphere. Every resource we expend on civilian evacuation is diverted from our only real chance to prevent extinction." As voices raised in heated debate, Matt exchanged glances with Rodriguez across the room. Whatever decision was reached, the next phase of this war would be fought not just for human survival, but for the very definition of humanity worth preserving. Dawn broke over Sydney's ruins with unnatural swiftness as the evacuation entered its third hour. The resistance had converted every functional vehicle, from military transports to civilian buses with makeshift armor welded to their frames, into escape vessels for the thousands of refugees gathered at designated extraction points. Lieutenant Gary Williams supervised the loading operation at Parramatta Stadium, its partially collapsed structure providing some cover from aerial surveillance. "Keep moving. 4 minutes per vehicle, no exceptions," he barked, as families clutched meager belongings and climbed aboard. Resistance fighters with grim expressions and modified alien weapons maintained a defensive perimeter, their eyes constantly scanning the skies. The evacuation had been meticulously planned over months, but the accelerated timeline forced by the approaching Kaylee warriors had thrown carefully calculated risk assessments into chaos. Military strategy now focused on speed over stealth, a dangerous compromise that left the massive convoy vulnerable to detection once it began its journey westward toward the Blue Mountains, where underground facilities had been prepared to receive the displaced population. Children clutched stuffed animals or family photographs, the last remnants of normal lives obliterated by the alien invasion, while parents maintained brave faces that did little to mask their terror. The human resistance had established a clear protocol. Families with children under 12 would be evacuated first, followed by those with specialized knowledge critical to rebuilding efforts. Then the remaining civilian population. Those with military training had drawn lots to determine who would remain behind to cover the retreat. A suicide mission accepted with quiet dignity by those who'd pulled the short straws. Amelia Chen moved through the crowd distributing water and emergency ration packets, pausing occasionally to comfort a child or provide medical assistance to the injured. "They're saying the Kali are different," an elderly man whispered to her as she bandaged his arm. "That they don't take prisoners." Amelia maintained a reassuring smile while avoiding direct confirmation. The reality that Kaylee warriors were genetically engineered specifically for human extermination rather than subjugation was classified information that would only accelerate panic among the already traumatized evacuees. The first wave of alien assault came without warning, a sudden silence followed by the distinctive high-pitched whine of atmospheric craft descending through cloud cover. "Air support, now!" Commander Hayes shouted into her communication device, as the enormous shapes of alien heavy bombers materialized above the stadium. The Resistance's remaining fighter aircraft, a cobbled-together fleet of pre-invasion military jets and modified alien interceptors captured in previous engagements, screamed into action from hidden runways in the Hawkesbury region. The aerial battle that erupted transformed Sydney's skyline into a cataclysmic light show as human pilots executed desperate maneuvers against vastly superior alien technology. What the humans lacked in advanced weaponry, they compensated for with reckless courage and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Captain Michaels, leading the fighter squadron, executed a vertical climb, followed by an inverted dive directly into the formation of alien bombers, his jet's missile payload depleting shields long enough for the following aircraft to deliver their attacks to vulnerable areas. The cost was devastating. For every alien craft destroyed, 3 human pilots perished, but the sacrifice bought precious minutes for the evacuation convoys to begin their journey westward. Gary found himself crammed into a repurposed delivery van alongside Matt Chen, Dennis Park, and a collection of small alien creatures called Voxes, 6-legged companions that had defected alongside their Mirren masters and proven invaluable for their ability to detect the approach of hostile forces. The Voxes chittered nervously, their sensory appendages twitching toward the eastern horizon, where massive atmospheric disturbances indicated the arrival of additional alien forces. Matt studied satellite imagery on a portable display, identifying possible routes through the labyrinthine ruins of Sydney's western suburbs. "They've deployed ground forces along Parramatta Road," he noted, highlighting concentrations of alien troops advancing methodically through the abandoned neighborhoods. "We'll need to detour through Olympic Park and follow the river northwest." Dennis adjusted the environmental controls, keeping the Voxes comfortable in Earth's atmosphere, his scientific curiosity regarding their biology temporarily overshadowed by more immediate concerns. The bioweapon dispersal worked in sectors 4 and 7, he reported, checking data from remote sensors. But they've already adapted countermeasures in the Harbor District. The genetic warfare advantage is deteriorating by the hour. The convoy jolted to an abrupt halt as Gary swerved to avoid debris from an alien fighter that spiraled into the high roadway ahead, its internal systems catastrophically compromised by human electronic countermeasures. "Everyone out," he ordered, recognizing the danger of remaining stationary as alien ground forces converged on the crash site. As they abandoned the vehicle and took cover behind the concrete supports of a collapsed overpass, Gary noticed a young boy, no more than 12, scrambling from the van's rear compartment. "Marcus? What the hell?" The boy, Amelia's younger brother, had apparently hidden himself among supply crates, defying the evacuation order that should have placed him on one of the first transports to safety. "They were separating families," Marcus explained, his expression simultaneously defiant and terrified. "I heard soldiers saying kids might be sent to different facilities than adults. I wasn't going to risk losing Amelia again." The moral dilemma this presented was immediate and severe. Turning back was impossible. Continuing with a child in tow potentially catastrophic, but abandoning him unthinkable. Matt made the decision for them, kneeling to place a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Stay close and do exactly as we say," he instructed, handing the boy a communication device. "If we're separated, this will help us find you." The Western escape route deteriorated into chaotic futuristic warfare as alien reinforcements established a blockade along the M4 motorway. Human resistance jets engaged in desperate dogfights overhead, their pilots pushing experimental aircraft beyond design limitations in suicidal attempts to create openings for the ground convoys. From his position in an elevated observation post, Colonel Barrett coordinated the combined air-ground operation, allocating precious antimatter charges harvested from captured alien technology to points where they would create maximum disruption to enemy formations. "Convoy Charlie, divert to alternate route Delta immediately," he commanded, as alien dropships deployed spider-like mechanical walkers directly in the path of the central evacuation column. The Resistance's strategy relied on dispersion rather than concentration, spreading the refugee groups across multiple routes to ensure that some would inevitably break through. This approach guaranteed some survivors, but condemned others to certain capture or death, an ethical conflict that weighed heavily on Barrett's conscience, even as he made the necessary tactical decisions that prioritized humanity's collective survival over individual lives. Night fell over the Blue Mountains as the fragmented remains of the Sydney evacuation limped towards safety. Nearly 30% of the vehicles had been lost to alien attacks, their passengers either killed or captured. Those that survived showed evidence of the harrowing journey. Bullet holes perforated metal panels, makeshift repairs held radiators together, and the faces peering from windows bore the hollow-eyed shock of those who had witnessed horrors beyond articulation. Gary's group had abandoned their damaged van hours earlier, continuing on foot through forested terrain where alien sensors struggled to differentiate human life signs from the abundant wildlife. Marcus had proven surprisingly resilient, maintaining pace without complaint despite exhaustion and hunger that had reduced some adult refugees to collapse. As they crested a ridge overlooking the extraction threat perimeter, where underground resistance facilities offered temporary sanctuary, the sky behind them erupted in brilliant purple flares. Cayley orbital bombardment, Matt identified grimly. They're leveling everything we left behind. The implication hung unspoken between them. There would be no return to the coastal cities, no reclaiming of territory. The human resistance was now committed to a desperate inland strategy focused on the mysterious rainfall technology that the aliens seemed determined to recover at any cost. In the valley below, massive camouflaged hangar doors opened to receive the approaching refugees. Anti-aircraft batteries, a mixture of pre-invasion human technology and modified alien weapons, maintained vigilant watch over the airspace. Medical teams rushed forward to treat the injured as vehicles passed through decontamination fields designed to neutralize tracking nanotechnology the aliens had deployed in recent weeks. Gary watched as families were reunited amid tears and relief, while others received the devastating news that loved ones had not survived the journey. Marcus sprinted ahead, searching frantically for his sister among the organized chaos of the reception area. Dennis adjusted his glasses, surveying the underground complex with professional interest. Pine Gap's research materials have been relocated here, he mentioned to Matt, nodding toward heavily guarded storage containers being moved deeper into the mountain facility. Whatever this rainfall technology is, we're betting everything on understanding it before they do. As Marcus's joyful cry announced his reunion with Amelia, a distant rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Gary turned to face the eastern horizon, where unnatural lightning illuminated storm clouds gathering with impossible speed over the plains they had just traversed. The alien invasion had entered a new phase, one where the battle for Sydney would soon be eclipsed by a continental struggle centered on technology older than either species, with stakes higher than mere territorial control. As hangar doors sealed behind the last refugee transport, Gary couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't simply retreating to a defensive position. They were being herded toward something the aliens wanted them to find. The Blue Mountains Research Facility buzzed with frenetic activity as the last of the Sydney evacuees were processed, catalogued, and assigned temporary quarters carved from natural limestone caverns. Amelia Chen moved through the medical ward, her uniform bearing the hastily added insignia of Chief Security Officer, a position thrust upon her after her predecessor's death during the evacuation. The underground complex, originally designed as a fallback position for government officials in case of nuclear war, had been expanded and reinforced over the past 18 months to serve as the Resistance's primary scientific hub. Its location, nestled within a labyrinth of natural caves and artificial tunnels, provided both concealment from orbital scans and defensive advantages against ground assault. As she approached the restricted section where Pine Gap's recovered research was housed, Amelia nodded to the guards, a mixed unit of human soldiers and Mirren defectors whose complementary capabilities created a formidable security detail. The biometric scanner confirmed her identity before massive doors constructed from salvaged alien alloy silently parted, revealing a research complex unlike anything else in human possession. "Dr. Park?" Amelia called, spotting Dennis hunched over, a workstation surrounded by holographic projections of molecular structures. "Command wants your preliminary assessment within the hour." Dennis barely acknowledged her presence, his attention fixed on the simulation before him, complex genetic sequences shifting and recombining in patterns that seemed simultaneously organic and engineered. The alien technology salvaged from Pine Gap had accelerated human scientific understanding by decades. But even with these advances, much of what they studied remained frustratingly opaque. "There's something wrong about these containment protocols," Dennis muttered, more to himself than to Amelia. "The security measures aren't designed to keep information in. They're designed to keep unauthorized personnel out. Whatever Pine Gap was hiding, they were more concerned about internal leaks than external threats." He removed his glasses, rubbing exhausted eyes that had barely closed during the 72 hours since their arrival. "I need access to Sublevel 8. The genetic samples are stored there, according to the facility manifest." The descent to sub-level 8 required passage through 3 additional security checkpoints, each more stringent than the last. At the final barrier, Amelia's clearance was deemed insufficient despite her senior position, an anomaly that raised immediate suspicions. "Override authorization Barrett Echo 7, she stated, invoking the emergency protocol established for situations where bureaucratic obstacles threatened mission-critical operations. The system hesitated before accepting the command, suggesting human intervention in the decision loop. Someone was actively monitoring their progress. The massive vault door retracted with a pneumatic hiss, revealing not the expected laboratory, but a seemingly endless corridor lined with transparent containment cells. Amelia's breath caught as the lighting activated sequentially, illuminating the occupants of these cells, dozens, perhaps hundreds of aliens. Unlike the Myran allies they had worked alongside, these specimens represented various subspecies of the invading force, many bearing evidence of extensive surgical procedures and experimental implants. "This is impossible," Dennis whispered, his scientific detachment momentarily shattered by the ethical horror before them. These facilities weren't constructed post-invasion. They're decades old. The realization dawned with sickening clarity. Pine Gap had been containing and experimenting on extraterrestrial beings long before the invasion, perhaps for generations. The medical equipment, though integrated with newer technology, showed designs dating back to the Cold War era. Specimen tags catalogued alien captives with clinical detachment, recording experimental protocols that violated every international convention on treatment of prisoners and medical ethics. "They knew," Amelia said, her voice hollow with the weight of this revelation. "Our government knew they were coming and kept it secret." Dennis moved from cell to cell, his trained eye assessing the condition of the captives. Most appeared catatonic or heavily sedated, but a few tracked their movement with unmistakable awareness and what could only be described as pleading in their multifaceted eyes. The alien invasion that had devastated Earth's populations and threatened human extinction suddenly appeared in a different light. Not an unprovoked attack, but potentially retaliation for decades of captured scouts and damaged vessels, of dissection, and experimentation on sentient beings who had ventured too close to Earth's atmosphere. As they ventured deeper into the facility, the nature of the research became increasingly disturbing. An expansive circular chamber housed what appeared to be genetic warfare development platforms, technology far beyond current human capability, but clearly designed for human operation. Dennis accessed a terminal, his authorization codes unlocking research logs that documented the systematic analysis of alien biology for vulnerabilities that could be exploited through engineered pathogens. They weren't just studying them, he realized with growing horror. They were developing a bioweapon, a species-specific virus designed to eradicate their entire civilization. The moral dilemma this presented was staggering. The extinction threat humanity now faced had been preceded by human scientists working methodically toward the same outcome for their alien adversaries. The logs documented successful test deployments against captured specimens, recording with clinical precision the degradation of neural pathways, the liquefaction of critical organs, the psychological torture of forcing members of social species to witness the deaths of their companions. "What the hell are you doing in here?" Commander Hayes' voice cut through their stunned silence. She stood in the doorway, flanked by security personnel whose weapons were raised not against potential alien threats but directed at Amelia and Dennis. "This area is restricted for a reason." Hayes' expression betrayed no shame or ethical conflict regarding the horrors surrounding them, only irritation at the security breach. "The Resistance leadership wasn't informed about this research," Amelia challenged, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm before she registered the futility of the gesture. Hayes laughed bitterly, gesturing around the chamber. "Who do you think authorized it? Barrett knows. Abraham knows. Everyone with clearance high enough to understand what we're facing knows that this is our only realistic option for survival. While you've been risking your lives to save individual humans, we've been developing the means to save our entire species." The military strategy Hayes outlined was brutally pragmatic. Deploy the perfected bioweapon against all alien life forms, including those who had allied with humanity, then rebuild civilization from the ashes once the invasion force had been eliminated. The ethical conflict between survival and humanity's moral identity reached its breaking point as Hayes led them through secure chambers containing the culmination of this research, delivery systems for the bioweapon designed to maximize alien casualties while minimizing human exposure. The Mirren aren't a separate species, Dennis observed, examining genetic profiles displayed on laboratory screens. They're the same species as the invaders, just a different political faction. This weapon doesn't discriminate. It will kill Echo and every defector who's fought alongside us. Hayes nodded without hesitation. Acceptable collateral damage. Once we deploy this, we expect 98% mortality among all alien physiologies within 72 hours. The remainder will be too weakened to maintain their technology or continue fighting. Amelia's military training had prepared her for difficult decisions, for sacrifices in service of greater strategic objectives. But this transcended tactical necessity. The human-alien alliance that had given the resistance its only meaningful victories, the shared sacrifice and developing trust between species, would be betrayed through an act of genocide that rendered humanity's moral claims meaningless. There has to be another way, she insisted, even as Hayes outlined deployment scenarios with the confident precision of someone who had eliminated all ethical obstacles from her calculations. There is no other way, Hayes countered, leading them into the facility's command center, where tactical displays showed the advancing alien forces systematically securing positions around former Pine Gap. Their elite Kali warriors have deployed a new class of bioweapon that specifically targets human genetic markers. They're doing exactly what we're planning, just more efficiently because their science is more advanced. She gestured to quarantine. Reports from forward observation posts, documenting horrific symptoms among exposed human personnel, rapidly accelerated cellular breakdown that couldn't be contained by conventional medical interventions. This isn't about maintaining some abstract moral high ground. This is extinction versus extinction. If we hesitate, if we prioritize ethical considerations over survival, humanity ends. Not just our current civilization, but our species, permanently erased. As Hayes spoke, Amelia noticed Dennis surreptitiously downloading research data to a secure device concealed in his sleeve, a desperate gamble that could provide options beyond the binary choice Hayes presented. The future of both species might depend on finding a third path that preserved not just human lives, but the principles that made those lives worth preserving in a universe where technological advancement didn't necessarily correlate with moral evolution. As they left the restricted area under heavy escort, the weight of what they had discovered settled over them like a physical burden. The knowledge that humanity's last stand might require becoming the very thing they had condemned in their enemies, sacrificing their defining characteristics in exchange for continued existence. The convoy transporting Matt's team toward the remains of Pine Gap maintained calm silence as they traversed the red dust plains of Central Australia. The unforgiving landscape, all rust-colored earth and skeletal vegetation, provided minimal cover from aerial surveillance, forcing them to travel primarily at night, and camouflage vehicles during daylight hours. 6 modified transport trucks carried a mixed force of resistance fighters and Mirren allies, their combined capabilities representing humanity's best hope for securing whatever remained of the rainfall technology before the Kali warriors could claim it. Matt studied tactical overlays on his portable display, noting the systematic pattern of alien search operations spreading outward from the destroyed facility. "They're being thorough," he observed to Gary, who drove with the focused intensity he brought to all tasks. Grid-by-grid sweeps with ground-penetrating sensors. Whatever they're looking for, they believe it survived the initial bombardment. Gary nodded grimly, his eyes never leaving the terrain ahead. Echo says their search patterns suggest they know exactly what they're looking for, just not precisely where it is. Like they've recovered something similar before, on other worlds. The attack came without warning, not from above as they'd expected, but from the Earth itself. The ground beneath the lead vehicle erupted in a shower of red dust and crystalline fragments as a massive form burst from subterranean concealment. The creature, if it could be called that, combined elements of biological and mechanical design, in ways that defied conventional classification. Standing over 15 feet tall with a segmented exoskeleton reinforced by metallic components, it moved with impossible speed for its size, multiple limbs terminating in weapons that hummed with energy. "Kaylee!" The warning cry came from the Mirren observer in the second vehicle moments before precision energy beams sliced through the lead truck's engine block, bringing the convoy to an immediate halt. Matt's combat training took over as he shouted orders, deploying his forces in a defensive formation that utilized the vehicles for cover. The human resistance fighters opened fire with modified alien weapons, their shots deflecting harmlessly off adaptive shields surrounding the Kali warrior. The Mirren allies responded with more sophisticated tactics, generating electromagnetic interference patterns that momentarily disrupted the elite aliens' defensive systems. For precious seconds, the Kali warrior appeared vulnerable until it adapted, its armor reconfiguring to compensate for the attack vector. As additional Kali warriors emerged from concealed positions, Gary surprised everyone by vaulting over the vehicle's hood and sprinting not away from the threat but directly toward it. "Williams, get back in formation," Matt shouted, believing his friend had succumbed to panic. What happened next defied explanation. Gary moved with practiced precision that matched the Kali warrior's inhuman speed, drawing a weapon none of them had seen before. The sword-like implement extended from a compact handle, its blade composed of shimmering energy that cut through the aliens' shields as if they didn't exist. The Kali hesitated, clearly recognizing both the weapon and the fighting style Gary employed as he ducked beneath a retaliatory strike and severed one of the warrior's limbs with a fluid countermotion. "What the hell?" Matt whispered, witnessing his seemingly ordinary companion transform into something else entirely, a fighter whose capabilities matched those of Earth's most formidable enemies. The ethical conflict this raised was immediate and disturbing. Gary had concealed abilities that could have saved countless human lives during previous battles. Why had he hidden his true nature from those who trusted him with their lives? The battle escalated as Gary engaged the lead Kaylee in what could only be described as a duel, their movements so rapid they appeared as blurs to human perception. Meanwhile, the remaining resistance fighters concentrated fire on the other Kali warriors, using the distraction to deploy experimental weapons developed from captured alien technology. A tense standoff developed as neither side could gain decisive advantage. The humans and Mirren suffering casualties, but maintaining enough coordinated defense to prevent the Kali from overwhelming their position. Marcus, who had insisted on accompanying the mission despite Amelia's objections, demonstrated unexpected value by crawling beneath the damaged vehicles to retrieve vital equipment and drag wounded fighters to safety. The boy's courage under fire impressed even the most hardened veterans, though Matt worried about the psychological impact of such intense combat exposure on someone so young. The futuristic warfare unfolding across the Red Desert would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. Human soldiers fighting alongside alien allies against a common enemy, using weapons and tactics that blended technologies from both worlds. As night fell, the battle reached a critical phase when the Kali warriors suddenly disengaged, retreating several hundred meters before taking defensive positions. The reason became apparent moments later when the ground trembled with approaching footsteps. "Xylic," Echo identified through the communication network, the translator barely able to convey the dread in the Mirren's voice. The massive creature that lumbered into view dwarfed even the Kali warriors, its biological components suggesting some relation to the invading species, but twisted through genetic warfare into something monstrous. Standing nearly 30 feet tall with armored plates covering vital areas and multiple sensory organs providing 360-degree awareness, the Xylic represented the invaders' ultimate ground assault weapon, a living siege engine designed to break entrenched defenses. "Fall back to secondary positions," Matt ordered, recognizing the futility of their current tactical situation. The resistance fighters began a coordinated withdrawal, while maintenance units worked frantically to repair damaged vehicles enough for escape. The Xylic's attack devastated their defensive line, its primary limbs smashing through improvised barriers, while secondary appendages fired projectiles that exploded on impact, showering surrounding areas with caustic chemical agents. Marcus, separated from the main group during the chaos, found himself trapped between collapsed vehicle components as the massive creature advanced. The boy's training asserted itself as he activated his emergency beacon and maintained position rather than attempting to run. Movement would only attract the Zilliq's attention more quickly than remaining still. Gary, still engaged with the Kali commander in their deadly dance of blades and counterstrikes, couldn't disengage to assist. The ethical conflict tore at Matt. Prioritize the mission objective of reaching Pine Gap or risk everything to save one child. The military strategy doctrine he'd been trained in offered a clear answer, emphasizing mission success over individual survival. Yet as he watched Marcus's beacon pulsing on his tactical display, Matt made the decision that defined his humanity rather than his training. Covering fire on the Zilliq. Torres, deploy the EMP charges. We're getting that kid out. The improvised rescue operation created just enough chaos for Matt to reach Marcus, pulling the boy from the wreckage seconds before the Zilliq's massive foot crushed it to powder. Their escape route cut off by advancing Kali warriors. They sought shelter in a natural rock formation as Torres detonated the electromagnetic pulse devices. The resulting energy cascade temporarily disabled the alien technology components integrated into the Zilliq's biology, causing the massive creature to stumble in momentary confusion. This vulnerability proved short-lived, as emergency systems within the beast activated, restoring functionality within seconds. But those seconds provided the opening the resistance needed. A modified alien plasma weapon, barely portable and requiring 3 operators, fired a concentrated energy burst that penetrated the Zilliq's primary armor plate. The creature's agonized roar shook the desert floor as it thrashed in pain, inadvertently, trampling 2 Kali warriors who failed to move clear of its death throes. The resulting explosion, as the Zilliq's internal power systems catastrophically failed, illuminated the battlefield like artificial dawn, the shockwave throwing combatants from both sides to the ground. In the temporary lull following the Zilliq's destruction, Matt reorganized their scattered forces. The human-alien alliance had suffered significant casualties. Nearly 30% of their fighting strength lost or too badly injured to continue. Gary returned from his prolonged engagement with the Kali commander, his unusual weapon now concealed, and his expression unreadable as he helped load wounded onto the remaining functional vehicles. "We need to talk," Matt said, the unasked questions hanging between them. "Not now," Gary responded tersely, his attention focused on the tactical display showing additional alien forces converging on their position. "There are more Kali within, 50 kilometers, and they'll have detected the Zilliq's power signature collapse. Whatever revelations about Gary's true nature or abilities would have to wait. Their survival depended on immediate extraction from the battlefield." As they resumed their journey toward Pine Gap under cover of the lingering electromagnetic interference from the Zilliq's destruction, Matt couldn't shake the sense that the ground battle had been merely a delaying action, keeping the resistance occupied while something more significant unfolded elsewhere. The betrayal he felt regarding Gary's hidden capabilities was tempered by uncertainty about what other secrets their allies, both human and alien, might be concealing. The fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance, with trust becoming as precious and rare a resource as the mysterious rainfall technology they sought to secure before their enemies could weaponize it against all life on Earth. The ruins of Pine Gap stretched before them, a landscape of twisted metal and vitrified earth where intense energy weapons had transformed concrete and steel into abstract sculptures. Matt's team approached cautiously, portable scanners sweeping for signs of alien presence or active defense systems. The facility had been constructed in concentric rings, with progressive security layers protecting a central underground complex that extended hundreds of meters beneath the surface. Whatever orbital bombardment had struck during the initial invasion had penetrated those layers with surgical precision, leaving much of the surrounding infrastructure intact while creating a direct path to the most classified sections. Gary led the advance team, his newfound combat abilities transforming him from support personnel to primary asset. Echo accompanied them, the Mirren scientists' specialized sensory organs detecting subtle energy signatures invisible to human technology. "The excavation predates the invasion," Echo communicated through its translator, examining exposed geological strata where the facility had been built into existing rock formations. Your government didn't construct this facility around something. They discovered. They built it to continue excavation that began earlier. As they descended through the shattered security layers, evidence mounted supporting Echo's assessment. Carbon dating of exposed structural elements revealed multiple construction phases stretching back decades before Pine Gap's official establishment in 1966. The earliest sections showed architectural influences inconsistent with mid-20th century human engineering, subtle details in material composition and geometric configurations that suggested non-human origin or influence. This wasn't just a joint American-Australian facility, Matt realized as they reached a massive circular chamber that had survived the bombardment largely intact. There were 3 parties to this agreement. The chamber walls displayed extensive damage from weapon impacts and hasty excavation, but portions remained that preserved ancient glyphs matching those found in alien vessels. Most disturbing was the unmistakable evidence that human scientists had been actively working with these artifacts and translating the language long before official first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The revelation that Earth's governments had maintained secret knowledge of alien civilizations while allowing their populations to believe they were alone in the universe represented a betrayal of public trust on an unprecedented scale. The truth about Rainfall revealed itself as they accessed surviving data archives within the facility's most secure section. Contrary to Resistance intelligence suggesting it was a weapon or technological system, Rainfall was something far more significant. An asteroid of extraterrestrial origin that had impacted Earth approximately 66 million years ago. Unlike natural space debris, this object showed evidence of artificial construction and purposeful guidance. Dennis examined holographic reconstructions with growing horror. This wasn't just an asteroid, he explained to the assembled team. It's a delivery system designed to transmit genetic warfare agents on a planetary scale. The dinosaur extinction wasn't a natural event. It was a deliberate deployment of advanced alien technology designed to reset Earth's evolutionary trajectory. Echo confirmed this assessment, adding context through knowledge preserved in Mirren ancestral memory. The alien invasion humanity currently faced wasn't their first encounter with Earth. It represented the return of beings who had used this planet as a testing ground for biological weapons throughout its history, triggering multiple mass extinction events whenever existing life forms began developing problematic characteristics. The asteroid is still here, Colonel Barrett stated, joining them through secure communication channels from the Blue Mountains facility. American geologists located it in 1962 during routine magnetic anomaly surveys. It didn't disintegrate. On impact, it buried itself intact nearly 2 kilometers beneath the surface. The implications were staggering. For 60 years, human scientists had been studying, and potentially reverse engineering, technology created by the same species now attempting to eradicate humanity. More disturbing was Barrett's revelation that the asteroid contained dormant biological agents, extinction threat delivery systems designed to activate upon retrieval by authorized users. The Kali warriors aren't just fighting for territory, Barrett explained grimly. They're attempting to recover a planet-killing weapon their ancestors left behind, one specifically calibrated to Earth's biosphere. The enormous space combat, resources deployed by the aliens suddenly made strategic sense. They weren't merely invading, but racing to recover superweapon components before humans could fully understand or utilize them against their creators. The excavation chamber extending beneath the central facility revealed where human efforts had reached the asteroid itself, a massive ovoid structure composed of materials not found naturally in Earth's geological record. Approximately 200 meters long and housed within a reinforced containment field, the object's surface featured geometric patterns that pulsed with subtle energy despite millennia of dormancy. The alien technology had been partially accessed through a breach in its outer shell, with evidence of human scientific equipment still connected to exposed internal components. Echo approached reverently, its translator struggling to convey complex emotional responses to what it recognized as a sacred artifact in Mirren culture. The Cedars, it explained, using a term that translated poorly, but conveyed concepts of progenitors or ancestors. This vessel contains the original genetic templates from which both our species ultimately derived. Your dinosaurs were not the target of extinction. They were simply obstacles to the evolutionary experiment. The revelation that both humans and their alien adversaries potentially shared distant common ancestry recontextualized the conflict entirely, from invasion to something more akin to family members fighting over inherited property, albeit with genocide as the contested inheritance. When communication was established with the military leadership at the Blue Mountains facility, Commander Hayes outlined a strategy that chilled everyone present. "We've modified the human-specific bioweapon to be compatible with Rainfall's delivery system," she explained, a voice devoid of ethical conflict, despite proposing what amounted to Echo and every defector who had fought alongside humans would die horribly if the plan succeeded. More disturbingly, the potential for unintended consequences when deploying technology barely understood after 60 years of study posed risks to all biological life on Earth, potentially triggering the very extinction event they sought to prevent. Gary's reaction to Hayes' proposal came with explosive violence. In a movement too fast for human reflexes to track, he crossed the chamber and physically lifted a senior military officer against the wall. "You're talking about genocide," he growled, his eyes shifting color in ways that confirmed Matt's suspicions about his true nature. Not strategic elimination of combatants, the extinction of an entire civilization, including billions of non-combatants who remain in their home systems. The confrontation escalated as security personnel drew weapons, creating a tense standoff that threatened to fracture the fragile human-alien alliance at its most critical moment. Matt intervened, physically placing himself between Gary and the increasingly nervous soldiers. "Stand down," he ordered, his authority temporarily stabilizing the situation. "We need options beyond mutually assured destruction." The ethical debate raged with increasing intensity. Survival versus moral identity, victory versus values, existential necessity versus fundamental principles. Even as they argued, though, alien detection systems registered approaching Kaylee vessels, their energy signatures indicating capital ships rather than scout craft. The extraction threat had evolved into an immediate tactical crisis that would force decisions with implications extending far beyond the current conflict. As alarms screamed throughout the facility, the moral dilemma crystallized into immediate choices. Hayes ordered immediate implementation of the bioweapon plan, directing technicians to install the modified pathogen within Rainfall's dormant distribution system. Echo and the Myran representatives protested that contaminating the artifact violated principles held sacred by both warring factions of their species. Gary revealed more of his true capabilities, demonstrating knowledge of the asteroid systems that confirmed he was neither fully human nor fully aligned with either alien faction. The situation deteriorated into near violence before Dennis proposed a third option, a targeted electromagnetic pulse calibrated specifically to the asteroid's unique energy signature, rendering it temporarily inert without destroying it or deploying its deadly cargo. "This buys us time," he argued, as Kaylee landing craft appeared on perimeter sensors. "Without committing to a course that makes us no better than those we're fighting." Barrett made the final decision, countermanding Hayes' genocide order in favor of Dennis's temporary solution. As resistance fighters prepared defensive positions and the specialized EMP device was hastily configured, Matt couldn't shake the sense that Gary knew far more about Rainfall than he had revealed, that his unusual abilities and intense reaction to Hayes' plan suggested personal stakes transcending mere ethical objections. The truth about Rainfall had revealed humanity's precarious position in a conflict spanning millions of years and potentially multiple worlds. But the truth about their allies, both human and alien, remained frustratingly opaque as the final battle for the ancient artifact began. The revelation about Rainfall sparked a philosophical firestorm among the resistance leadership gathered in the emergency command center beneath Pine Gap's ruins. Holographic projections displayed the approaching Kali fleet, massive vessels, descending through the atmosphere in a formation that suggested not just military precision, but ritualistic significance. Colonel Barrett's decision to pursue Dennis's temporary neutralization plan rather than Hayes's genocide option had divided their forces along moral lines. Some, like Lieutenant Rodriguez, supported the choice to maintain ethical boundaries despite overwhelming tactical disadvantages. If survival requires becoming worse than our enemies, what exactly are we fighting to preserve? She challenged during the hastily convened Strategic Council. Others aligned with Hayes's brutally pragmatic assessment. Morality is a luxury of species not facing extinction. The aliens wouldn't hesitate to eradicate us. They've already attempted it multiple times throughout Earth's history. The debate raged, even as technicians worked feverishly to modify the electromagnetic pulse device, adapting alien technology to target the asteroid's unique quantum signature without triggering its biological payload. Echo and the Mirren representatives offered perspective that transcended the immediate conflict, explaining how the current invasion represented merely the latest chapter in a civil war that had raged across multiple star systems for millennia. The faction you call invaders believes biological diversity must be controlled through periodic extinction events, with evolutionary trajectories guided toward predetermined outcomes, Echo communicated through its translator. My people believe life should develop naturally, with intervention only to prevent catastrophic collapse of ecological systems. This fundamental philosophical divide had fractured their civilization centuries ago, with the militant faction gaining technological superiority through ruthless experimentation, while the Mirren preserved cultural and ethical traditions at the cost of military power. The human resistance found uncomfortable parallels with their own internal conflict. Hayes's willingness to deploy mass destruction weapons versus Barrett's insistence on maintaining moral boundaries despite tactical disadvantages. The ethical conflict had transcended species boundaries, suggesting that questions of values versus survival represented universal evolutionary challenges rather than uniquely human dilemmas. Gary's unexpected knowledge of the rainfall artifact added further complexity to an already chaotic situation. When pressed by Matt during a rare private moment, he revealed partial truths that raised more questions than they answered. I was embedded with your resistance to monitor human development and prevent precisely the scenario Hayes is proposing, he admitted. My people have been observing Earth since long before the current invasion. We are interested parties in this conflict, though neither fully aligned with the invaders nor the Mirren. The revelation that a third alien faction had maintained covert presence on Earth shattered fundamental assumptions about humanity's position in the interstellar conflict. Gary's people apparently possessed technological capabilities exceeding both warring factions, including genetic manipulation that allowed perfect human disguise, yet had chosen observation over intervention until Hayes's bioweapon plan threatened what he cryptically described as balance. Matt struggled to reconcile years of friendship and shared combat experiences with the knowledge that Gary represented an entirely different agenda, potentially manipulating human resistance efforts toward objectives beyond their understanding. The debate became academic when perimeter alarms signaled breach of the facility's outer defenses. Kaylee assault teams had penetrated the surface installations and were methodically advancing toward the underground chambers containing rainfall. Barrett deployed mixed human-Mirren combat units to establish defensive choke points, using the facility's architecture to funnel attacking forces through prepared kill zones. The military strategy emphasized delaying actions rather than decisive engagement, buying precious time for Dennis to complete the neutralization device. Amelia, who had arrived with reinforcements from the Blue Mountains facility, coordinated the defensive operation with grim efficiency. Having witnessed the horrors of Pine Gap's research facilities, she found herself torn between competing moral imperatives, preventing alien access to planet-killing technology while refusing to deploy equally horrific weapons against them. The ethical compromise she proposed split the difference. Targeted elimination of Kaylee command units, while attempting to capture rather than kill rank-and-file soldiers who might, like the Mirren, be capable of recognizing common interests with humanity. Hayes's actions rendered these nuanced moral calculations moot. While attention focused on defending the primary access points, she led a small team of loyal operatives to implement her original plan, installing the modified bioweapon within Rainfall's dormant distribution system. Dennis discovered the sabotage only after completing the neutralization device, finding critical safety protocols overridden and the weapon primed for activation once the aliens attempted to access the artifact. "You've doomed both species," he told Hayes when confronting her in the asteroid chamber. "Our understanding of this technology is rudimentary at best. The bioweapon might kill the invaders, but its interaction with Rainfall's systems could trigger cascading effects we can't predict." Hayes remained unmoved, her worldview reduced to binary calculations of human survival regardless of cost. Better we risk everything than surrender to certain extinction. If some humans survive, our species continues. If we lose Rainfall, we lose Earth. The philosophical divide had evolved from academic debate to imminent existential crisis. Principled restraint versus pragmatic genocide, with the fate of multiple civilizations hanging on which approach prevailed. Amelia made the decision that changed everything. After learning of Hayes' actions from Dennis via emergency communication, she abandoned her defensive position and moved through maintenance tunnels to intercept Hayes before she could complete the bioweapon installation. The confrontation occurred in the Environmental Control Center adjacent to the asteroid chamber, a space filled with equipment regulating atmospheric composition, temperature, and radiation shielding around the ancient artifact. Hayes defended her position with the conviction of someone certain of their moral clarity despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. "They experimented on us for millennia," she argued, brandishing evidence from Pine Gap's research archives. "Every major evolutionary leap in human history shows evidence of their genetic manipulation. We've never been truly independent. We're their experiment, their property to reset whenever we develop in directions they dislike. This is our only chance for genuine freedom." Amelia recognized the partial truth in Hayes' assessment, but rejected her conclusion. "Becoming what we hate ensures they win regardless of who survives," she countered, making a final attempt at persuasion before the situation deteriorated into violence. When Hayes refused to stand down, reaching for her weapon while ordering her team to complete the bioweapon activation, Amelia made the terrible choice that circumstances demanded. She engaged emergency quarantine protocols, sealing Hayes and her operatives in a chamber rapidly filling with neutralizing gas designed to eliminate contaminants from the artifact environment. Through the reinforced viewport, Amelia watched Hayes collapse, her expression shifting from rage to understanding in her final moments. There was no satisfaction in the victory, no sense of moral superiority, only the grim recognition that ethical choices in wartime often involve determining which unforgivable acts remain necessary rather than which principled stands feel righteous. With Hayes eliminated, Amelia gained command authorization to implement the original neutralization plan, directing Dennis to deploy the electromagnetic pulse device while technical teams removed the partially installed bioweapon. As the asteroid's energy signatures diminished under the influence of the specialized EMP, distant explosions signaled intensification of the surface battle. The Kali forces, perhaps sensing that their primary objective was being rendered temporarily unattainable, had escalated from systematic advance to all-out assault. The resistance leadership consolidated around Barrett's authority following Hayes' death, implementing a unified defense strategy that maximized their remaining advantages: intimate knowledge of the facility layout, predetermined firing positions covering critical junctions, and the tactical creativity that had kept humanity in the fight despite overwhelming technological disadvantages. Gary revealed more of his capabilities during the most intense fighting, moving with impossible speed through Kali formations and eliminating their command units with precision that suggested intimate knowledge of their tactical systems. Matt coordinated the combined human-Mirren forces from the central command hub, distributing resources to pressure points as they developed, and maintaining communication between increasingly isolated defensive positions. The battle for Pine Gap, and by extension for the Rainfall artifact that could determine humanity's fate, evolved into a desperate holding action against enemies who viewed defeat as cosmologically unacceptable. With each passing hour, the resistance position deteriorated as Kali reinforcements established control over surface access points and methodically eliminated defensive positions. The alien invasion had reached its most critical phase, with both sides fully committed to victory regardless of cost. not merely for territorial control, but for determination of which philosophical approach to life itself would prevail across Earth, and potentially throughout human-occupied space. As night fell over central Australia, the resistance fighters knew their position was ultimately unsustainable. The question wasn't whether they would be overrun, but whether they could complete their mission before that inevitable outcome. The battle for Pine Gap reached apocalyptic intensity as dawn broke over the central Australian desert. The underground facility had become a labyrinth of last stands and desperate sacrifices, with resistance fighters holding position just long enough for their companions to fall back to the next defensive line. Matt coordinated the retreat from a mobile command post that relocated every 30 minutes to avoid targeting by Kaylee electronic warfare specialists. The human-alien alliance that had seemed so improbable 2 years earlier now represented humanity's only hope, with Mirren combat units using their specialized knowledge of Kaylee tactics to predict and counter enemy movements through the facility's complex architecture. Rodriguez maintained neural connection with Echo despite the increasing strain on her implant, translating tactical information between species with efficiency born of practice and desperation. The Resistance's military strategy had evolved from victory to delay, buying precious time for Dennis to complete final modifications to the neutralization device that would render rainfall temporarily inert. The extinction threat loomed larger with each passing hour as alien reinforcements established complete surface control, methodically sealing potential escape routes while deploying specialized breaching units against the facility's most hardened sections. The first indication that something had fundamentally changed came not from the ground battle, but from the sky. Resistance sensors detected massive energy fluctuations from the alien mothership hovering directly above Pine Gap, a vessel so large it generated its own weather patterns in the surrounding atmosphere. "They're powering up something big," Rodriguez reported, monitoring electromagnetic signatures that exceeded anything previously recorded during the invasion. Gary's expression shifted to one of recognition and dread. "Extraction protocol," he identified. "They're deploying a tractor beam configured for geological extraction, not to destroy the facility, to lift the asteroid directly from its resting place." The implications were immediately clear to everyone in the command center. The collie ground. Assault hadn't been the primary operation, but merely a distraction and containment action while their capital ship prepared to physically remove rainfall from Earth's crust. Dennis's voice came through emergency channels, his usual scientific detachment replaced by barely controlled panic. "The neutralization field isn't fully established. If they extract now, the asteroid's containment systems could fail catastrophically during the process. The bioweapon haze partially installed could deploy during extraction, but with unpredictable dispersal patterns." The facility shuddered as the tractor beam engaged. Ancient rock formations that had remained stable for millions of years, suddenly subjected to forces they were never designed to withstand. Massive fissures appeared in chamber ceilings, releasing cascades of dust and debris as structural supports failed throughout the complex. "All units, emergency evacuation protocol Omega," Barrett ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Fall back to extraction points and prepare for immediate surface departure." The planned withdrawal collapsed into near panic as entire sections of the facility began tearing away from their foundations, creating impossible obstacles and trapping isolated groups of defenders. Matt led a desperate effort to reach the asteroid chamber, where Dennis and his technical team were attempting to stabilize the neutralization field despite deteriorating conditions. The alien technology had entered an active state as the tractor beam's energy interacted with its dormant systems, ancient symbols illuminating along its surface in sequences that suggested automated activation protocols initiated by proximity to its creator's technology. The scene that greeted Matt upon reaching the central chamber defied comprehension. The rainfall asteroid, now fully exposed as artificial rather than natural in origin, hovered at the center of a massive energy vortex created by the intersection of the tractor beam with the facility's structural materials. The chamber's reinforced ceiling had been completely torn away, leaving open sky visible above as the mothership's underside deployed collection mechanisms tens of thousands of feet overhead. Dennis and his team worked frantically at control interfaces attempting to maintain the neutralization field even as the artifact began its inexorable ascent toward the alien vessel. "The field is collapsing," Dennis shouted over the deafening roar of tearing metal and rock. "We need to evacuate now or we're all dead." Matt organized the remaining personnel into emergency evacuation groups, assigning the most experienced East-Joe fighters to rearguard positions covering their retreat through increasingly unstable access tunnels. The futuristic warfare that had defined the conflict for 2 years had devolved into the most basic survival scenario: escape before being crushed by collapsing infrastructure or trapped within a failing facility being physically lifted from the planet's surface. Gary remained behind as the evacuation progressed, his attention fixed on the ascending asteroid with an intensity that suggested personal connection beyond strategic interest. When Matt returned to retrieve him, having ensured all surviving human and Mirren personnel had reached evacuation transports, he found his friend interfacing directly with alien technology integrated into the chamber walls. "You need to go," Gary stated, without turning from his task. "I'm implementing secondary containment protocols that might prevent catastrophic deployment if the neutralization field fails completely." Matt recognized the suicide mission for what it was. Someone would need to remain until the last possible moment, manually adjusting containment parameters as the asteroid's systems responded to extraction stresses. "I'm not leaving you behind," he insisted, moving to assist despite limited understanding of the alien technology. Gary operated with suspicious familiarity. The chamber lurched violently as another section tore free, the floor beneath them tilting at an increasingly precarious angle as the entire central portion of the facility began separating from surrounding structures. Gary lost his footing as a support beam collapsed, sliding toward a gaping chasm that had opened along the chamber's eastern edge. Without hesitation, Matt launched himself across the failing surface, catching Gary's hand moments before he would have fallen into darkness. Suspended above certain death, Gary looked up at Matt with an expression combining gratitude and resignation. "You know what I am," he stated, rather than asked. "You know I've concealed my true nature and purpose from the beginning." Matt nodded, straining to maintain his grip as the chamber continued disintegrating around them. "I figured it out during the Kali ambush," he confirmed. "But it doesn't matter now. Whatever your original mission, you fought alongside us when it counted." With tremendous effort, he pulled Gary to relative safety on a temporarily stable platform. "Brotherhood isn't about shared origin," Matt continued as they made their desperate way toward the last functioning exit route. "It's about who stands with you when everything falls apart." The simple human truth seemed to affect Gary profoundly, his alien composure briefly cracking to reveal genuine emotion. As they reached the extraction point where the final transport waited with engines running, the enormity of their situation became clear. Pine Gap was being systematically uprooted, massive chunks of earth and facility components rising into the air as the tractor beam methodically extracted everything within its influence radius. The Rainfall asteroid had nearly reached the mothership, its ancient systems fully illuminated and apparently communicating with the vessel above. The Resistance pilots pushed their aircraft to structural limits, navigating through atmospheric disturbances created by the extraction process, while monitoring radiation levels that fluctuated wildly as the asteroid's containment fields interacted with the tractor beam's energy signature. From their rapidly increasing altitude, the survivors witnessed the full scale of what was happening below, a massive crater forming as though a giant hand had reached down to scoop away a portion of Australia's ancient heart. Aboriginal elders among the resistance spoke of dreamtime stories that suddenly contained new meaning, tales of sky beings who had come before, reshaping the land in cycles beyond human memory. As they achieved safe distance, the mothership's collection process completed with the asteroid fully retrieved into a specialized containment bay. For precious moments, it seemed they had escaped the worst-case scenario despite failing to prevent the artifact's capture. Then multiple alarm systems activated simultaneously across all monitoring equipment as radiation signatures spiked beyond measurable parameters. "The bioweapon," Dennis whispered in horror. "Hayes' sabotage triggered during extraction." From their position miles away, the resistance forces watched as the alien mothership was engulfed in brilliant blue energy cascades erupting from within its structure. The bioweapon Hayes had partially installed had deployed, but not as she had intended. Rather than targeting alien biology specifically, it had apparently interacted with Rainfall's ancient systems to create an uncontrolled energy reaction that consumed the vessel from inside. The space combat capabilities that had made the alien invasion nearly unstoppable were rendered irrelevant as catastrophic system failures propagated throughout the massive ship. Smaller vessels docked along its periphery attempted emergency departure, many caught in secondary explosions before achieving safe distance. Those that escaped fled upward, abandoning Earth's atmosphere with the desperate acceleration of beings fleeing existential threat rather than tactical disadvantage. The mothership's structural integrity failed completely as the chain reaction reached critical power systems, transforming the once magnificent vessel into an expanding sphere of superheated plasma that rained debris across hundreds of square miles of uninhabited desert. The human pilots pushed their aircraft to maximum range, barely escaping the shockwave that radiated outward from the explosion. "My God," Rodriguez whispered as radiation monitors finally returned to measurable levels. "How many were on that ship?" The ethical conflict that had divided the resistance regarding Hayes' bioweapon plan acquired new dimension as they contemplated the scale of what had just occurred. Thousands of alien combatants, perhaps tens of thousands, had perished in moments, along with any Mirren who might have been prisoners aboard. Echo and the other Mirren representatives maintained respectful silence, their cultural traditions regarding mass casualty events preventing immediate comment on the tragedy regardless of its strategic implications for their cause. Barrett's assessment was characteristically direct. "The mothership is destroyed, but they'll be back. We've won a battle, not the war." Gary confirmed this evaluation, adding details that only someone with his unique perspective could provide. "The Kali leadership will interpret this as further evidence that humanity represents an unacceptable threat, a species capable of turning their own weapon against them. The next invasion won't be about recovery or occupation. It will be about complete eradication." The momentary victory felt hollow in light of this assessment. The brief celebration among surviving resistance fighters, giving way to somber recognition that they had merely postponed rather than prevented extinction threat. As the transport aircraft adjusted course toward their hidden mountain base, Matt stood at the observation port watching Central Australia recede beneath them. The massive crater where Pine Gap had stood represented more than physical destruction. It marked the point where humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos had fundamentally changed. They were not victims of random alien aggression, but participants in a conflict spanning millions of years and multiple star systems, with Earth repeatedly reshaped by interventions both deliberate and accidental. The philosophical questions raised by these revelations would transform human civilization if they survived long enough to process them. What did it mean that human evolution had potentially been guided by external forces? How should they regard species that might share distant common ancestry despite current enmity? Did preventing extinction justify becoming what they despised in their enemies? As these questions circulated unspoken among the exhausted survivors, Matt noticed Gary staring intently at a datapad containing sensor readings from the mothership's destruction. "What is it?" he asked, recognizing the focused expression that indicated his friend had identified something significant. "The asteroid," Gary replied without elaborating further. "The readings suggest it wasn't destroyed in the explosion. Something ejected from the mothership moments before catastrophic failure. Something with the exact mass signature as Rainfall. The implications hung between them like a physical presence. The ancient weapon that had reshaped Earth's evolutionary trajectory multiple times remained intact. Location unknown, still capable of fulfilling its designed purpose if recovered by those who understood its operation. The battle for Sydney, the evacuation, the desperate stand at Pine Gap, all merely opening moves in a conflict that would determine not just political control of Earth, but the very definition of what constituted human or alien in a universe where such distinctions increasingly blurred. The hidden mountain village that received the Pine Gap survivors seemed a world away from the technological battlefield they had barely escaped. Nestled in a remote valley of the Great Dividing Range, the settlement combined pre-invasion human infrastructure with adaptive elements developed during 2 years of resistance. Solar panels camouflaged with local vegetation provided sustainable power, while underground hydroponic facilities produced food secure from alien detection. Children played in communal areas under watchful eyes of guards whose weapons remained discreetly present. A generation growing up knowing both extraordinary danger and the fierce protective instinct of a species fighting extinction. Amelia walked the perimeter path each morning, her security duties providing structure amid the chaos of aftermath and planning. Today, she found Marcus sitting at the highest observation point, his young face bearing the premature maturity of those who have witnessed too much. "Do you think they'll come back soon?" he asked without preamble, eyes fixed on the distant horizon where atmospheric disturbances still occasionally signaled alien vessel movements. "Not immediately," she answered truthfully, honoring the unspoken agreement among resistance leadership not to shield the young from difficult realities. "They lost their mothership and most of their elite Kali warriors. They'll need to regroup, possibly bring reinforcements from other systems. We have time to prepare." The Resistance Council meetings had grown increasingly tense as the strategic implications of their Pyrrhic victory became clear. Barrett and the military faction advocated aggressive development of counterweapons based on technology salvaged from crashed alien vessels. "We hurt them for the first time," he argued, during particularly heated debates. "Now we press the advantage, locate, and secure the ejected rainfall artifact before they can recover it, adapt their bioweapons for our use, establish orbital defense systems using modified alien technology." The ethical conflict that had divided them regarding Hayes's genocide plan resurfaced in new forms with each proposal. Dennis and the scientific contingent urged caution, emphasizing how limited their understanding remained despite 2 years studying alien systems. "We've seen the consequences of deploying technology we don't fully comprehend," Dennis reminded them, holographic displays showing the catastrophic chain reaction that destroyed the mothership. The same weapons that eliminated their command vessel could have easily rendered Australia uninhabitable if the reaction had propagated differently. Military strategy must account for technological limitations as well as capabilities. Between these positions, Amelia sought compromise that balanced immediate survival tactics with preservation of principles worth surviving for. The human-alien alliance faced its greatest test in the aftermath of Pine Gap. Echo and the remaining Mirren representatives struggled to process the massive casualties among their kind, including those who had been aboard the mothership as prisoners or collaborators. The surviving Kali forces on Earth had responded to their leadership's destruction with increasingly desperate attacks against human settlements, seemingly abandoning strategic objectives in favor of inflicting maximum civilian casualties. Gary's unique position, neither fully human nor aligned with either alien faction, made him both invaluable intelligence asset and object of lingering suspicion. During rare private moments with Matt, he revealed more about his people's perspective on the conflict. The cedars that created rainfall weren't simply weaponizing extinction, he explained as they reviewed ancient glyphs recovered from Pine Gap's archives. They were conducting experiments in directed evolution across multiple worlds. Earth represented one testing ground among many, with periodic extinctions creating evolutionary bottlenecks that forced adaptation along specific paths. The revelation that humanity itself might be the product of alien genetic warfare experiments spanning millions of years challenged fundamental understanding of their place in cosmic history. Matt found himself increasingly drawn to the Resistance's long-range reconnaissance efforts, volunteering for dangerous missions that took small teams beyond their secure territory to gather intelligence on alien movements. During one such expedition to the remains of Sydney, he witnessed firsthand how the alien occupation had transformed in response to their leadership's destruction. The methodical processing of human captives for labor and experimentation had given way to seemingly random destruction, with entire city blocks leveled by weapons deployed without clear tactical purpose. More disturbing were signs of internal conflict among the invaders, evidence of Kali warriors executing their own subordinates, public displays of dismembered alien bodies bearing markers Matt recognized as indicating suspected Mirren sympathizers. The space combat capabilities that had made the initial invasion nearly unstoppable were being turned inward as command structures collapsed, creating opportunities but also unpredictable threats. Most concerning were indications that surviving Kali specialists had established dedicated search patterns radiating outward from the mothership's destruction site. Systematic sweeps suggesting they were hunting for something specific that had survived the explosion. "They're looking for rainfall," Gary confirmed when Matt reported his observations. Their entire invasion was predicated on recovering that technology. Its cultural and religious significance to them transcends military value. They believe it contains the original genetic templates from which their species derived, making it effectively sacred. The resistance leadership convened emergency planning sessions, acknowledging the urgent need to locate the artifact before their enemies could recover it. Echo provided critical context through ancestral knowledge passed through Mirren generations. The device was designed with multiple fail-safes to prevent unauthorized activation, it explained through its translator. The catastrophic reaction aboard the mothership likely triggered emergency protocols that jettisoned the artifact to prevent complete destruction. Its internal systems would then attempt to establish contact with authorized users, meaning it is actively signaling its location to any Kali with appropriate genetic markers who come within range. This revelation transformed their strategic calculations from theoretical to immediate. The survival of human resistance, perhaps humanity itself, now depended on locating and securing alien technology older than their species before the increasingly desperate invaders could recover their civilization's most sacred artifact. Amelia's team developed the search operation, combining human survivalists intimately familiar with Australia's wilderness, with Mirren scientists capable of detecting the unique quantum signature associated with rainfall technology. Resources stretched dangerously thin as they attempted to maintain essential defense operations while diverting personnel to the critical recovery mission. The underground resistance faced impossible choices regarding resource allocation. Every transport aircraft assigned to the search meant one less evacuation vehicle available if their mountain haven was discovered. Every power cell diverted to detection equipment meant reduced capacity for medical facilities treating the wounded. The ethical conflict between individual survival and collective responsibility challenged even the most dedicated resistance members. "We can't save everyone," Abraham acknowledged during a particularly difficult council session discussing evacuation priorities if their location was compromised. "But we can ensure enough survive to rebuild, to remember who we were and why we fought." This uneasy balance between pragmatism and principle defined their planning as surveillance teams reported increasing alien activity throughout the region, suggesting systematic elimination of potential human strongholds. Dennis approached Amelia privately after one particularly contentious strategy session, his scientific detachment briefly abandoned in favor of urgent moral concern. "There's something you need to know about the bioweapon research," he confided, ensuring no recording devices could capture their conversation. Before Hayes' death, she transferred complete schematics to 3 trusted officers who shared her perspective on acceptable measures for human survival. Their continuing development without council authorization, adapting the formula to work independently of rainfall's distribution system. The revelation sent ice through Amelia's veins. After everything they had experienced, after witnessing the catastrophic potential of such weapons, elements within their own resistance still pursued genocide as viable strategy. The moral dilemma. This transcended simple questions of command structure or authorization protocols. If humans deployed such weapons successfully, they might ensure short-term species survival while simultaneously destroying the ethical foundations that defined humanity worth preserving. Yet if she moved against these officers, exposing their unsanctioned research, the resulting internal conflict could fragment the resistance at its most vulnerable moment. As dawn broke over their mountain sanctuary, Amelia found Matt preparing for another reconnaissance mission, this one targeting a suspected alien research facility, where captured humans were reportedly being subjected to accelerated genetic warfare experiments. "We'll bring back everyone we can," he promised, checking weapons that represented humanity's best adaptation of alien technology for their own defense. The determination in his eyes reflected their shared understanding that the war was far from over, that the destruction of Pine Gap and the alien mothership represented merely the closing of one chapter in a conflict that might span generations. While the immediate battle had been survived, the strategic situation remained dire. The alien invasion forces retained orbital superiority despite losing their command vessel. Their technology still vastly exceeded human capabilities in most domains, and their determination to recover rainfall had only intensified following the mothership's destruction. Yet something fundamental had shifted in humanity's collective psyche. The knowledge that they had successfully struck back against seemingly unstoppable enemies, that the combined human-alien alliance had achieved what neither species could accomplish alone, provided foundation for hope rather than mere desperate survival. As transport vehicles departed on their separate missions, some hunting for captured friends, others searching for ancient technology that might determine their species' fate, Amelia turned her attention to the endlessly complex task of balancing immediate tactical concerns with the long-term vision of a future worth fighting for. The war for Earth continued, its ultimate outcome uncertain, but the resistance had evolved from scattered survivors into something the invaders clearly feared, a unified force willing to risk everything not just for survival, but for the right to determine their own evolutionary destiny in a universe more complex and dangerous than they had ever imagined. The resistance hidden in mountain sanctuaries continues their search for the rainfall artifact, while preparing for the inevitable return of forces far beyond our technological capabilities. But the question remains, will we find a way to break this 100 million year cycle, or are we simply postponing the inevitable? The truth about our cosmic origins changes everything we thought we knew about human evolution. Were we designed as an experiment? Are we an unexpected mutation? Or perhaps something far more significant, the first species on Earth capable of recognizing the pattern and fighting back against our creators? The alien invasion that began 2 years ago might represent humanity's greatest challenge, but it also offers our greatest opportunity to claim true independence among the stars. But wait, did you notice what happened when Gary revealed his true nature to Matt during their escape from Pine Gap? His admission that a third alien faction has been monitoring Earth suggests possibilities even more mind-bending than what we've explored today. Could some extraterrestrial forces actually be protecting humanity? Is there a cosmic chess game playing out with Earth as just one battlefield among many? These questions and more will be answered in our next video, The Guardian Species, Earth's Secret Alien Protectors Since Prehistoric Times. What do you think happened to the Rainfall asteroid after it was ejected from the mothership? Could it have landed somewhere on Earth, waiting to be discovered? Or perhaps it's now orbiting our planet, its ancient systems slowly reactivating? Share your theories in the comments below. I read every single one and love how this community comes together to explore these cosmic mysteries. The elite Kali warriors we discussed today have a fascinating origin story that reveals even more about the alien civilization threatening Earth. Their genetic modifications and rituals date back millions of years and connect directly to ancient human mythology in ways that will blow your mind. If you're intrigued by these connections, you definitely don't want to miss our upcoming deep dive into alien military strategy across multiple planets. This cosmic battle for Earth's future continues to unfold even as we speak. Will Amelia's team locate the missing rainfall technology before the remaining alien forces? Can humanity find an ethical path to victory without becoming the monsters they're fighting? The answers might determine not just our survival, but what kind of species emerges from this existential conflict. Don't leave this journey hanging. Click the subscribe button and activate notifications so you'll be first to know when we reveal the next chapter in humanity's greatest challenge. Each week, we explore another aspect of this cosmic struggle that mainstream science refuses to acknowledge. The truth is out there, and together, we're going to find it, one video at a time. Until next time, keep watching the skies, and remember, they're watching us too.